Sex Ed with DB is a podcast about the sex ed you should have gotten in school, but if you're like me, you probably didn't. Host DB has a Master of Public Health from Columbia University with expertise in sexuality, sexual and reproductive health, and so rest assured that the podcast is always medically accurate and based in science. Like Repros Fight Back, Sex Ed with DB is focused on the importance of sex ed, but right now, there is an especially important difference between our two shows. Sex Ed with DB has been focused on pleasure, ranging from the importance of intimacy to what happens in your brain during an orgasm. Like her guest, Dr. Lex Brown says on one of our favorite episodes, pleasure is a birthright. Find Sex Ed with DB wherever you get your podcasts, and remember that joy, intimacy, and pleasure are powerful and necessary, especially in times like these. Welcome to Repros Fight Back, a podcast on all things related to sexual and reproductive health rights and justice. Hi, Repros. How's everybody doing? I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and my pronouns are she, her. So y'all, I am so excited. Last week we released our 50-state report card on sexual and reproductive health. It was so great to get it out in the world and send it out to people. It has been wonderful to talk to people about it, and it makes me so happy to have it appreciated and see what people think about it and see what they are learning new about their state and how their state is doing when it comes to sexual and reproductive health. It all makes me so happy. I hope it's a tool that people find useful, and we are already, thinking about ways that we can expand its reach this year. And so I'm really excited to see what we are going to do with it for the next year. I'm really looking forward to developing some state partnerships and working with some local states about their scores. So I'm just really excited about the report card. I hope y'all get a chance to check it out. We'll make sure to include a link in our show notes, but otherwise it is at reportcard.reprosfightback.com, and you can see how your state is doing overall. You can click on the various indicators to see how your state is doing compared to other states on sex ed or abortion or many of the other measures we have on our report card. So I hope you enjoy it and find it a useful tool for you. I'm trying to think. I just got back from New York when I am recording this. I had a quick overnight trip that I went up to New York for, and it was a reception to get to meet some other judges for the Signal Awards. I'm going to be a judge again this year, so it was so wonderful to meet other people in the podcasting industry. This is just like part of my job, and so the vast majority of my job is actually not the podcast, so I'm not in the podcasting world and going to have a lot of podcast connections. So it was always nice when I get to go to these things and meet other people who are doing podcasting and finding out ways that maybe we can collaborate. It was so much fun, and I got to meet some really wonderful people. So I'm really grateful that I was able to do that. And it was always fun to go up to New York. I was there for such a short time. I missed out on seeing some people that I would have liked to have seen, but it was still a lot of fun, and I'm glad I was able to do it. And then for recording this interview, I had just got home. My first train I was supposed to be on got canceled, and then the one I got after it got delayed, and so I got home not that long before I did the interview with Jess, and so my poor kitties were beside themselves for having been alone for 40 hours without me. And so they were we need attention now. So you may hear a couple little meows in the background. They were very needy at the moment, but they'll get all the snuggles when I'm done recording this and have some time to spend with me. Let's see, what else? Oh, at the end of the interview, Jess and I talk a little bit about books, and I botched the name of one of the books that I had just read. It's The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. So I don't know what I said, but it was not The Teller of Small Fortunes. It's like a cozy little fantasy, and I really enjoyed it. I have been doing, I always am doing a lot of reading, and I always have multiple books going, generally like one work-related one, and then like a fun one, and then something on audiobook, whatever that is. So recently I read the book on the Challenger, which was really great, by Adam Higginbotham. And that was fascinating to listen to. I think I had talked about before that my dad had done some consulting with NASA. And so hearing his stories from when he was working on the moon rover and about NASA culture and stuff, it was really fascinating to then read the Challenger book or listen to it, because I did it on audiobook. And hearing a lot of that kind of echoed still in what NASA culture was at that time, which was decades later. So it was just really fascinating. It made me miss my dad and think about my dad a lot and how much I would have loved to have talked to him about this book after I had read it. So I don't know. It was a bit of a bittersweet read, but very good. Okay, I think with that, we will go to my interview with Jessica Mason Pieklo with Rewire News Group and the podcast Boom Lawyered. It is always so much fun to have Jess on and have great conversations. We had plans for what we were going to talk about, and then last week happened, y'all. And there's so many things happened at the Supreme Court that we had to switch our topic and talk about everything that happened on the Supreme Court last week and about Pam Bondi getting fired. So that is what we are going to talk about this week. With that, let's go to my conversation with Jess. Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me back.
And it was like such a calm, quiet week. Like nothing happened. I just have no idea what we're going to talk about.
No, book recommendations, I think.
Ooh, that sounds great.
Actually, compared to the news cycle, it does sound phenomenal.
Okay, before we get too far off the rails, do you want to take a second and introduce yourself for any of our audience who doesn't know you already?
Sure. I am Jess Pieklo. I am co-host of the Boom Lawyered podcast with Imani Gondi over at Rewire News Group, and I am executive producer of legal content and advocacy there. So exciting stuff going on at Rewire, and I am thrilled once again to be talking with you, Jenny. You always seem to bring me on when things are super chill.
Yeah, no, I wait for this like real quiet moment. Actually, it was supposed to be kind of a chill conversation.
It was. It was. But the Supreme Court had other plans.
Other plans. Okay, so let's start with what happened with the Chiles case. And maybe we should start with like what was the case?
Sure. So I think you had me on the show way back to talk about sort of upcoming cases that were on my radar at the court. And this was one that I had tagged, and it's Chiles v. Salazar. It's a case out of Colorado, and it involved a therapist's challenge to a Colorado statute that bans conversion therapy. And there's a lot to break down here. So the Colorado law at issue bans a lot of practices that fit into an umbrella term called conversion therapy. Among the practices banned in Colorado includes talk therapy. There's others that, like a whole bunch of it. So that's one form. And the Alliance Defending Freedom, no surprise there,
always
found a Christian talk therapist to challenge the Colorado's ban on conversion therapy as it applies to her practice. So this wasn't a challenge on the statute writ large, the whole thing, kit and caboodle. This was the part that says no talk therapy for purposes of trying to change somebody's gender identity, sexual orientation, the things that we understand, the harms to be around talk therapy and conversion therapy. So it was a narrow challenge to begin with. The Supreme Court took up the case, heard oral arguments, a couple months ago. I mean, this was a quick decision. And on Tuesday, March 31st, released an 8-1 opinion in favor of Chiles. And I say it's in favor of Chiles because they didn't strike the Colorado ban. And I'm seeing a lot of that reporting, and I want to sort of parse through that. What the justices did was say that the lower court was incorrect when they didn't apply strict scrutiny to the Colorado law because they bought the idea that it involved targeted viewpoint discrimination. Chiles is a Christian, has a particular belief, so they bought that. So that is a big red flag. But what they didn't do is say, ergo, the Colorado conversion therapy ban is unconstitutional. What they did is direct the case back to the lower court to apply that strict scrutiny standard to Chiles's claims. What that means is that part of the ban will likely fail. Like at some point, that part of the Colorado law will get struck. And at some point, other states that have similar bans on the books may find themselves wrapped up in legal challenges because, as you and I know, Jenny, that's how the Alliance Defending Freedom works. But the Colorado case was not the case that struck down in one fell swoop conversion therapy bans across the country. And I also, this isn't to minimize the harm that happens in those places because it's significant. There are other avenues for people who have been harmed by conversion talk therapy practices, in particular medical malpractice claims. One of the things that's really important about the Colorado fight and statute and the Chiles' case is that in Colorado, it involved state licensed therapists. So the argument that Colorado made was, you can do all the conversion talk therapy you want, just don't be expected to be licensed by the state. And that was not persuasive to 8 justices. The only one who dissented was Justice Jackson. And so we will definitely see more of these kinds of cases. And it may, that framing and the way the court is thinking about speech and conversion therapy may sound familiar to folks who remember the fight over crisis pregnancy centers that went to the Supreme Court ultimately in NIFLA versus Becerra. And in NIFLA versus Becerra, California had tried to regulate under consumer protection laws crisis pregnancy centers and have them have certain mandated disclosures like, oh, they're not medical clinics, they're not licensed to provide medical care. And the conservative legal movement challenged successfully that targeted regulation and said that was a speech ban. And so what we are seeing once again is the anti-abortion playbook, particularly when it comes to litigation, working itself out in LGBTQ spaces. So it was a bad decision for what it brings, for what it portends ahead, for the idea that even the liberal justices, with the exception of Justice Jackson, couldn't wrap their head around the bad faith nature of these kinds of free speech and First Amendment claims that are happening right now. They very much are, Justice Kagan was basically like, you shouldn't be upset. It can apply, to talk therapy practices that actively, promote and endorse supporting your own gender and sexual identity. But we all know, Jenny, that's not how it works right now. And so I think that's the disappointing part of it. But, if you are, LGBTQ, a family member of a trans kid, if you are a trans person yourself, this is an opportunity to fight. It's an opportunity to advocate. The Colorado legislature is already working on a fix. It's in the session now. So this is not a moment to give up. And it's really one of the reasons why I think I am digging down into the details of this is the Alliance Defending Freedom wins if we all think the fight is over already. And it's not, like we're seeing here in Colorado. Our legislature is like, okay, well, let's fix that then. And we have every reason to think that in this legislative session or the next, that will happen. Is that going to stop the Alliance Defending Freedom? No. But in the interim, in that political process and in that time is the opportunity to advocate for more change, to, bring more communities together. This will not be a popular decision if it becomes broad scale practice. And so, it was a terrible way to start the midweek and honestly March. We very much expected this decision later in the term. It was one of the more marquee cases. They dropped it on Trans Day of Visibility, which I do think is a coincidental, but just terrible, mean-spirited timing regardless by the universe there. And so it is another part of the conservative legal movement's attempt to rewrite familial rights and who counts as a family, what kinds of families count, what kinds of families don't count. And I don't know that we're really talking about Chiles in a familial law or, parental rights kind of way, but I do very much feel like it fits the vibe.
Yeah, I'm so glad we talked through this because so much of the reporting or we released our report card this week. So my week was chaos and not having time to do a bunch of the reading and digging in on things. So just seeing the headlines on Blue Sky or what some of the people were saying, it sounded much bigger than it was. And then a couple hours later, coming back and seeing that it was 8-1, just my stomach dropped. And I was like, seriously? Only Jackson? But yeah, and then I was able to, listen to Boom Lawyered on my way back from New York today. And then also had listened to Strict Scrutiny to get a better idea of what actually happened.
Yeah, and I mean, I am by no means minimizing what this opinion sets up. It is a big shift in the way that the court has considered speech, and in particular, medical-related speech. It's not that big of a shift, again, if you put it in the context of NIFLA versus Becerra and the idea that sort of conservative Christians in this country are really successfully reworking the First Amendment so that it is both a sword and a shield for them. But, what will be interesting is to see if this kind of decision bleeds into other areas of medical speech, because that's really going to be dicey. Are you a naturopath who, wants to, can sort of advocate for your patients in terms of a homeopathic way to treat a cancer diagnosis? And does that receive strict scrutiny if the state says you can do that, but just don't do it as a licensed professional? That's where it starts to, really you can see how bad the thinking is that the court adopted there. And it's disappointing from Sotomayor, who usually is very good at recognizing the individual harms that these kinds of laws really fit or, really create. And, Justice Kagan was just like, hey, everybody can, everybody has viewpoints and it will be neutral. But again, that's they seem to have their heads in the sand in terms of both the structural realities and the real world implications on this case. And that's unfortunate.
Okay, so the other thing I learned about today on Boom Lawyered, because again, I had a quick trip up to New York, so my day was not involved looking at all the things other than going through Union Station in D.C. and seeing people leaving the Supreme Court protests. So I had all of their Birthright Citizenship signs, but I hadn't really had a chance to dig into the case. So that was the first I had heard any breakdown, was listening to Boom Lawyered this morning. What happened in the Birthright Citizenship case?
It is, Jenny, I've been covering the court for a long time,
yeah.
Right? A long time, listeners. And, I said it on our podcast, Boom Lawyered, and I really think it to be true. This is one of the most consequential cases of the court's history of our lifetime and for an understanding of the Constitution. So the case is Trump versus Barbara. And, back in January, Trump had issued an executive order that purported to try to limit birthright citizenship for certain folks and with a date cutoff, and it was a mess. You don't do that. The Constitution, the 14th Amendment, very clearly states,
seems pretty clear,
how that goes. We have 150 years of precedent, very clearly stating this, but a premier project of the conservative legal movement, of the Heritage Foundation, of Project 2025 and 2026 now is to rewrite the 14th Amendment in a way that re-understands personhood in this country, whether it is citizenship and who is a person by birth, by blood. We heard in the oral arguments all of this, sui juris and sui sanguis, these deep, old principles of do we track fidelity by who you're born to or who your leader is at the moment, right? So, but all of this is about who counts. And, I really focus in on that idea of rewriting an understanding of personhood because where this goes, right? This is hand in hand with the same conservative legal movement that's trying to recognize that life begins at conception under the 14th Amendment, and that, there are the idea of fetal personhood and fetal rights. And so the good news from oral arguments, at least in this case, is that this argument seemed to be a bridge too far for most of the justices. Justice Sam Alito is your Fox News watching grandpa. He is only going to believe what he hears from this administration and Fox News hosts. That's not an exaggeration, right? At all. And Clarence Thomas is along for the ride. So that's unfortunate. But everybody else seemed to understand that this was a radical proposition. I mean, they dug up 100-some-odd-year-old argument that was designed to keep Chinese Americans out, or Chinese immigrants out and from becoming Americans. And it didn't work. And I mean, not the Solicitor General not even being able to tell Justice Gorsuch whether or not he thought Indigenous people and Native Americans would qualify for birthright citizenship when they're literally like Indigenous. That's the point. I think it was on Threads, a comment that someone said, like, not being able to answer, well, are Native Americans subject to the birthright citizenship test? And Neil Gorsuch is like not being prepared to talk about cookies with Cookie Monster, but so that's all good, except for the fact that the court took this case to begin with. And that is not good. And this is why I really, I was concerned when I saw they took it because, as you know, I've said on this podcast a lot of times, the only reason the court takes these kinds of cases is to make a statement, to do something. That's what they did with Dobbs, right? What are they trying to say here? And as much as I want the administration to lose, and based on oral arguments, it sounds like that's going to happen, I am skeptical that the Constitution is going to win. Just because the administration loses, I don't necessarily think that the Constitution wins in this case. And I worry that the press, much along the lines of what we saw with the Chiles versus Salazar, and sort of, getting the like broad stroke kind of right, but like missing the details are important. The press is going to say that this was a check on Trump. And if it was a check on Trump, they wouldn't have taken the case. What this does is allow John Roberts to launder the court's reputation when they're the reason we're in this mess. So when the birthright citizenship decision comes down, and should it come down against the administration, celebrate that, but do not hand it to John Roberts for anything, because he's the reason we're here.
Oh, yeah. There will definitely be a handful. I mean, a handful is being like way minimalist. I'm sure there'll be quite a few of like, they're being reasonable. Like, look at how moderate the court has been. And I can already hear it. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. A check on Trump's power, kind of like they did with the tariffs case. And it's like, no, that cat is gone, right? Like that horse has left the barn, whatever your sort of metaphor is here. And this is also an administration that's shown it has no interest in obeying court orders that aren't convenient for them. So I think there's a lot to watch here. And, the State of the Union, John Roberts looked like a very sorry, sad man. And again, I think he should be. I mean, Trump was there at the argument for like 20 minutes. I hadn't
heard that until, because again, I was like in my own world, and I saw some like weird reference like on social. I'm like,
he like mob bossed it up. Yeah, no, he like mob bossed it up like, oh, I'm going to like go intimidate and sit in the front. And the thing about oral arguments, to anybody who's either listened to them or had the privilege of being in the courtroom for, it sounds really sexy, Supreme Court oral arguments, but 99.9% of the time, it is a dull experience. It's really not the kind of fireworks and, you'll get the quip and whatnot, but you got to understand like that one little pithy quip by John Roberts where it's like, oh, it's a new country, but the same Constitution. You had to listen to almost 3 hours of oral arguments to get that one soundbite. Trump lasted like 20 minutes and then he dipped out. So it was a bad look. And, you know, like...
Has that ever happened before?
No, this is the first time in the history of everything that has. You know, it's so wildly unprofessional. I mean, forget like proper, improper, or whatnot. It's just, you know, this is a mafia state administration, and that's how they treat everything. And he was trying to like shake down and intimidate the justices, and he just looked like a sad old man.
So my office is right behind the Supreme Court, and so I have talked about ever since I started working there, like someday just like going to like hear an oral argument, but like
I mean, it's I'm not trying to like, you know, be like, oh, it's no big deal. I mean, it can be really cool, but just, you know, usually the court is hearing, you know, very precise arguments. Like you don't, even in the big marquee cases, you're, you know.
No, I would have to go to the little one.
No, I mean, you could, but it's just, it often, you know, if you can live stream them, then you can at least like do other things. And so... or like have a, you know, cup of coffee while you're listening to it or something, you know? So you don't necessarily need to subject yourself, but like experience history, but also protect your peace.
I can just look out the window. I'm okay with that.
I will say Justice Jackson, again, just to keep, you know, sort of tooting her horn, was phenomenal. I mean, she was asking Solicitor General Sauer like real nuts and bolts questions like, okay, so tell me, how does this work? Are we deposing pregnant people? Are we having folks, you know, claim their allegiance? Because it wasn't to the country, it was to the presidency, which is just bananas. Are we having them do that every 4 years? How is this going to operate, sir? And Sauer couldn't answer because they didn't think through any of this. They just act. And, you know, that's the real shame, is that it used to mean something to do all of this. And the institution of the Supreme Court is so corrupt and so debased at this point that it's hard to take anything from them seriously, despite the huge stakes on people's day-to-day lives.
Okay, that leads us to the big news of today when we're recording, which is Thursday, April 2nd. Pam Bondi is out. That's, I would say surprising, but not surprising. Like, she's been such a, like, faithful foot soldier, but also that doesn't protect you in this administration.
No, not at all. And I mean, you know, bye is sort of like, it feels good to say. I have to remind folks that it was going to be Matt Gaetz originally as Attorney General before Pam Bondi.
I mean, I'm not expecting someone
so
better.
It's like, you know, she was really bad. And I'm honestly kind of surprised she lasted as long as she did. The first Trump administration, he was rolling through appointments. People probably memory hold that, but like everything was chaotic. But, you know, his cabinet in particular was very, very chaotic. And by comparison, Trump 2.0 has been more stable in terms of the turnover from an HR perspective. You know, what's interesting is there's a subpoena that Pam Bondi has for later on this month to testify related to the Epstein files. That subpoena doesn't go away just because she got canned. So that's interesting. She was a very good loyalist, but I think at the end of the day, whoever does replace her will be more than a loyalist. It will be somebody who is very acutely and keenly interested in upending voting in elections and prosecuting political enemies. I don't think it's necessarily a great sign that we're going to bring in somebody new and an attorney general when Trump just dropped a dumb, terrible, unconstitutional executive order purporting to limit mail-in voting. You know, whatever Kash Patel is going to do at FBI and the, you know, constant pressing the boundaries of military occupation and domestic spaces. First, we saw it with D.C. and then in the National Guard, which they haven't left, right? I don't need to tell you that.
Still here. They're supposed to be here through the end of the administration.
Right. And then, Minneapolis and other places where there were ICE raids, and now we're seeing that extended to airports across the country. That's not a rollback, right? Like I remember before 9/11 and none of these offices even existed yet, but once they're there, it's really hard to pluck them out. So as happy as I am to see her go, and she was terrible, and I hope the perp walk that we will all get to witness that involves Pam Bondi at some point, that will be worth it. But I do think for like everything right now, it feels very fraught in terms of what's next. I've seen some people say, oh, it'll be Ken Paxton from Texas or something like that. And I mean, on the one hand, it absolutely could be, who knows? And he's certainly proven himself an eager lapdog for the administration. And he's got a lot of hot water in Texas right now. Who are the Dems who would vote? Fetterman? I don't know. It's going to be a ride, but yeah, and in particular, I think it is once again a lesson to white women, especially, that carrying water for fascists, for white supremacy, isn't ultimately going to protect you. Your proximity to power is proximity. It's not power itself. And so stop doing it. Be better.
Yeah, and I mean, she did so much damage within the Department of Justice that I think some of the really big things that people see in the Epstein files and things obviously take a lot of the attention, but thinking through the Civil Rights Division and the various areas that she has really attacked, the Justice Department not doing face violations anymore, except for Don Lemon,
So much. And I mean, I feel bad for folks who had previously worked in that office. There are a lot of good lawyers who left the Department of Justice because it is such a mess there. And that just, it is very page 2 in the conservative playbook, break government and then tell everybody, see, government doesn't work. And so that is, she took a hammer to that department, and it's going to take lifetimes probably to rebuild it. And in terms of the ability to build back any trust, interdepartmentally across agencies, I think we're a long ways from that.
Yeah, I mean, I really just feel that with just this administration in general, so much has been broken and destroyed, and will it be built back? Can it be built back? And it will take so long for it to happen. As you know, I do a lot of work in the global space. So, I mean, USAID is gone. There is no just bringing back those people or that organization and all of the amazing work that it was doing. And, people are dying.
Yeah. And, generations of trust building in those communities, because it's not USA would come in and be and everybody would be sweet, you're here, that is, there's relationship building. And once that happens, then we saw, I don't need to tell you, we saw great gains, but it's really, it's not sustainable for a couple more years.
Okay, this has all felt really bleak and dark. I mean, even the fun Pam Bondi is gone is still dark because it's going to probably be worse. What is something that is bringing you joy right now? Let's do that instead.
I'm out here in Denver, and if anybody has seen my social media in even the least bit, you will know that I am the Denver Summit FC's self-appointed super fan. We have a women's soccer team for the first time in a long time in this league, and went to the home opener with 63,000 of my closest friends at Mile High Stadium. It was a blast. So really, that's amazing. I have given myself the challenge of going analog on my reading for 2026. As not that no shame, no anything. Audiobooks are phenomenal, but I am really, as I told you before we started recording this, I am on a mission to slow myself down. Urgency serves authoritarians, and I will not participate in it. So that is my frame for 2026. Your urgency is not my problem. And so that's really something that I am finding joy in is taking some time. And yeah, women's soccer, go Summit. It's all I'm going to talk about.
I had great joy from, as you know, I went to the University of Wisconsin.
Yes.
University women's hockey team continuing their dominance with back-to-back championships.
Was so fun.
The men are in the Frozen Four right now. I mean, I guess we'll give them their props too. But I was just so excited to watch the women's hockey team after they had so many Badgers playing in the Olympics and winning gold and silver in the Olympics. To see them then also win the national championship was pretty amazing.
Oh, I love it. I think I'm a Badger.
Yes.
So I have somewhere back there in my little tchotchke spot, I have a chair from, a little mock-up chair from Memorial Union.
Yes.
So, it's love. And yeah, Madison, Wisconsin's such a great hockey town. I know everybody thinks football, but it's a good place.
When I was young, when Wisconsin football was terrible, so they weren't televised, so it was a 1:00 game. We used to go to the Wisconsin football games and then had the Saturday hockey tickets.
Oh, yeah.
And so we would do both in the same day. It was delightful.
What a great day in Madison.
I know.
Can't beat it. So good. I'm glad you're finding some joy too.
And always books. I am a huge reader, so
What are you reading right now?
Okay, so I just finished the the Teller of Small Fortunes or something like that. It's a kind of cozy fan. I have really fallen into the cozy genre. So delightful.
I love it.
But I just started the third Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. It's just so delightful. How about you?
I love it. I love it. I am currently reading Melissa Oftemauer's memoir. She's the former bass player for Smashing Pumpkins and Hole. So it's like a love letter to the 90s in particular. And it's an easy breezy read. I love music histories and memoirs, all of that kind of stuff. And so that was, that's it. Barbara Kingsolver's got a new novel coming out this year that I'm really excited about. She's my top author by far. And so anytime, I can dig in. And so I'm going to splurge for that in hardcover, those kinds of things. Nice. It's the little things.
I've been trying so hard. My toxic habit, I guess, is I really love buying books and looking for what's new and what I have. So my TBR is so obscene, and I read a lot on I have an iPad mini that I use for my e-reader, and there are so many already on there. But then Barnes & Noble was having a 25% off pre-order sale, and I bought so many books.
It's good. I
was going to buy them anyway at some point. So
exactly,
and money.
Support authors. You're supporting authors. Very important.
Yes.
So
I have those, and I feel like someone said something about and then I have my trophy books. So the ones I loved that are then on my bookshelves.
Yes, very much so. Oh, good. Well, we'll be well read through this dumpster fire at least.
Yes. Okay. We always end with what can people do? So what are you suggesting for people to do right now? Because with all of the court stuff, it just feels so what can we do?
Well, I think if folks are concerned about the status of conversion therapy bans in their state as a result of Chiles, now is a great time to reach out to their lawmakers and say, hey, is our bill protected? What do you think? Can we make those protections tighter? Now is the time to really advocate for going the distance for LGBTQ kids in particular. So there's that. As always, direct aid is the lifeline line of, and particularly in fighting back against authoritarianism. So if you do have the ability to contribute to direct aid in some ways, whether it's food shelves, whether it's volunteer time, whether it's just money for rides, do that. People need that right now a lot. And, community is really the antidote to authoritarianism. And so finding ways to be in community, know your neighbors. It sounds really corny, but checking in on each other is a radical act right now.
I love that. Well, Jess, as always, it was so much fun talking to you. Thank you for being here, and I'm sure we will talk again soon.
We will, and as always, thanks for having us, and just stay safe out there, folks.
Okay, y'all, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jess. I had so much fun talking to her, as always. It was such a chaotic week, y'all. So much happened, and I'm glad that we had Jess on so that we could dig through some of it. And with that, I will see everybody next week. If you have any questions, comments, or topics you would like us to cover, always feel free to shoot me an email. You can reach me at Jennie, Jennie, at reprosfightback.com, or you can find us on social media. We're at Repros Fight Back on Facebook and Twitter, or Repros FB on Instagram. If you love our podcast and want to make sure more people find it, take the time to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Or if you want to make sure to support the podcast, you can also donate on our website at reprosfightback.com. Thanks all.